Hello friends, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Aaliyah, and today I have an original book tag for you. So I came up with the idea for this book tag before I even started my channel. It was way back in probably like early April or so, but I never filmed it because I really wanted to save it for the like cozy fall winter season. So this is the baked goods book tag, and each question kind of corresponds with a different baked good, because if you didn't know, one of my favorite hobbies outside of reading is baking. So I really like to bake like muffins and bread and cookies and stuff like that. So anyways, each question corresponds with a different like baked good. So some of them are like muffins or cookies or whatever. So let's just get into it. So the first one is Blueberry Muffins, a book with a little something extra. So for this I picked a poetry collection that just came out, which is called Eternal Sentences by Michael McGriff. So this is actually written by my academic advisor for university, and he is a really awesome poet and he's a really cool person, and so I just started reading his new poetry collection and I'm kind of obsessed with it. It's really unique because each poem, here, let me see if I can show you. Each poem is written in kind of a different way. So each line of the poem is a sentence, and all of the poems are like that. And so he kind of like is working in this new form, and I really like this collection because it kind of has this like haunted vibe to it, and it's really about like his childhood experiences growing up poor in like rural America. That is my answer for question 1. And question 2 is Chocolate Chip Cookies, an oldie but goodie. So this can be a book that you like read as a kid that you really enjoyed, or it could be like an old favorite from like a few years ago. So for this I'm gonna pick the first book in the Seven Realms series by Cinda Williams Chima. So this is called The Demon King, and this is a young adult fantasy novel. And so this was one that was my absolute favorite in high school and middle school. And this is a older fantasy novel, and we follow this guy, his name's Han Alistair, and he's the only book boyfriend I've ever had. And he is part of this kind of poor family, and when he was a kid they called him Cuffs Alistair because he had these like metal cuffs on his wrists. And the story kind of goes from there. So it's kind of about him, and it's also about this girl who's a princess, and her family is like ruling the kingdom, and there's a lot of magic in this world. There's also kind of like this group that I thought of them kind of like Native Americans, or sort of like there's the ruling class, and then there's this other group that kind of like lives out in the woods. And so this princess girl, who's one of the main characters, she is like half royalty and half like from this other clan. So anyways, this world is really interesting. I love this series. It's one of my favorites of all time. So yes, that is my oldie but goodie. And then number 3 is Snickerdoodles, a book that feels like home. So this could be anything that feels homey and cozy and comforting to you. So for me, I'm going to pick the first book in the Lockwood & Co. series, The Screaming Staircase by Jonathan Stroud. So you guys know I talk about this series all the time. It's my favorite. I just finished the last book and it was awesome. So this first book introduces us to all of the characters. So we meet Lockwood and Lucy and George, and we get to see their little found family, and we get to understand the world. So it's set in this alternate version of London where ghosts are kind of like running rampant, and there's these different psychic detective agencies where they go and investigate hauntings, and they capture ghosts and things like that. Yeah, and they go in all these different cases in these different like haunted houses and different funky places and stuff, and a lot of times they basically have to like solve murders, and it's really cool and it's really fun, and there's lots of humor and banter and that kind of stuff. So that one feels like home to me personally. And then number 4 is Coffee Cake, A Book That Surprised You. So I said this is coffee cake because when I was a kid, the first time I had coffee cake, it like blew my mind because I never had coffee cake before, and I was like, oh my god, this is the best thing I've ever had in my whole life. So yes, a book that surprised you. For this, I'm gonna go with The House on Vesper Sands. So this is a kind of a murder mystery book that's set in London in the winter. So this is a really like cozy mystery, and I read this earlier this year and I gave it 5 stars. I really loved it. It was just one I randomly picked up from the library, and I hadn't really heard many people talking about it, but it's really good. So I was super surprised by how much I enjoyed that. There's like a paranormal aspect to it, and the characters were really like vivid, and I really fell in love with them. This is supposed to be a series eventually, but only the first book is out right now. So yes, that is my answer for that one. And then the next one is Burned Fruit Bread, A Book That Left a Bad Taste in Your Mouth. If you've ever had burned fruit bread, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I've burned cranberry orange bread a few times, and I usually eat it anyways because if I don't, I get sad. So it's got a distinct flavor. Anyway, so for this I have 2 books. So one of them is Better Together by Christine Riccio, and I feel bad about this because I love Christine as like a person, and I watched her YouTube videos a lot when I was younger, and I just love her energy. But this book was not it. The writing was not for me. It kind of drove me a little bit nuts because there's a lot of like fake swear words in here, and it was rough. It was rough. I'm just gonna leave it at that. And then the other one that left a bad taste in my mouth was Radiance by Grace Draven. So I know this is really controversial. Lots of people love this book, but I like loved it for the first half, and then the second half it just like took a nosedive for me because the male love interest just started getting really like, I don't know, he was just giving me bad vibes, and he was kind of rapey and just weird. He was getting like really angry, and I don't know, I didn't think the consent thing was totally there. Whatever, that's all I'm gonna say. The next one is Cherry Cheesecake, A Book That You Indulged In. So this could be just something that you like binge read. It could be a series that you totally like got absorbed in. Whatever, however you want to take that, go for it. For this one, I'm gonna pick The Lady Upstairs by Haley Sutton. So this is one I read like at the beginning of 2021, and I really enjoyed this one. This is one that I kind of heard was on a few people's TBRs. Like I think Riley from Riley Marie mentioned that she wanted to read this. And I saw it at the library and I picked it up. It's really short. It's a noir thriller, which I'd never read before. And oh my god, I love this so much. I binge read it. And I had to just know what was going to happen because the main character is super morally gray, and she was making some weird decisions, and all her friends are really sketchy. And it's basically about this woman who works for like this little agency where they like blackmail rich men for money. So it's kind of supposed to be set up to be like a way for women to like get back at these bad men, and a lot of the men work in like Hollywood and stuff like that, but the agency ends up like not really being what you think, and there's kind of some sinister things going on, and some people get killed, and it kind of goes from there. It's about this woman, and she's just trying to figure out like what's going on with her boss. So her boss is called like the Lady Upstairs, and she's this mysterious woman and nobody really knows who she is. She kind of like leaves notes for people. Nobody really sees her. She's kind of like the puppet master of this agency. And so our main character is trying to figure out who the Lady Upstairs is, and trying to figure out if she is good or if she's bad and killing people or what. So anyways, I binge read this. There was people dying. It's also sapphic. There was like smoking and drinking, and there was some sexual stuff, and there was people getting shot, and I was like, oh my god. I was so into it. So if you haven't read that, I recommend that you do. And then the next question is M&M Cookies, a book with lots of diversity. So this could be anything that you consider to be diverse. This could be a book by a Black author. It could be something that has lots of like queer rep in it, whatever you think. I kind of have two for this. So the first one is The Only Black Girls in Town by Brandy Colbert. So this is a middle grade novel, and we follow this young black girl, and her name's Alberta, and she is living in this town, and it's kind of like a beachside town, and she's into like surfing and stuff, and she's going to middle school, and in this town there's not very many other like people of color. And so one day this new family moves to town, and they move like across the street from her, and it's this mom and daughter who are both black, and they moved there from New York, and so the two girls kind of end up like becoming friends, and they're both kind of like navigating microaggressions at school and things like that. And it's kind of like a coming of age story as well, and then it's also very queer. So Alberta has two dads who raise her, and it's really cool to see their family dynamic because they're really super sweet to her, and she kind of gets like some backlash from that, from like her friends and stuff too at school, because because her family is like very queer and different in this town and whatever. So anyways, this is one that I really recommend. It's a really sweet story, and I had a really fun time reading this one. So this is lovely. And then the other one I wanted to recommend is The Girls I've Been by Tess Sharp. So I actually filmed like a whole reading vlog for this, and then I scrapped it because I got like really sick in the middle of it, and so I just like, it just wasn't gonna work. But I really loved this book, and it's very queer. We follow this girl who kind of gets stuck in a bank robbery. So she and her new girlfriend and her ex-boyfriend go to this bank, and while they're at the bank gets robbed, and they get held hostage, and they have to figure out how to get out of the situation. So I loved the found family element in this. It's also like pretty dark. The main character, Nora, has like a pretty messed up past because her mom was a con artist, and she used to help her mom with these cons before she like kind of got away from her mother. And so she's trying to use like her old con artist skills to like con her way out of this bank, and it is super fast paced. I love the relationship between Nora and her girlfriend. It is just really fun and also kind of like suspenseful. I was like on the edge of my seat. I was scared for these characters. I just wanted them to be okay and to be like happy and in love and safe. But yes, so that's another one I recommend if you're looking for a book that's really diverse. And then my last question is Sourdough Bread, a book that was hard to get into but was worth it in the end. So for this, I'm going to pick Hurricane Season by Fernanda Melchor. So this is a book that won an award, and it's one I saw at the library, and I picked it up on a whim. I hadn't heard anything about it. It's a short book, and it kind of has like a funky cover, and I remember I picked it up because the synopsis said that it's about a witch who gets murdered. But it's about way more than that. So this is a really dark novel, and it's set in historical Mexico, and it's about generational trauma, trigger warnings for everything, murder, abortion, abuse, homophobia, grooming, all kinds of stuff like that. But it's really interesting because at the beginning of the novel we find out that this person who was a witch, or considered a witch, was killed, and then each chapter is from a different person's perspective in the community who had some sort of relationship with the witch. But at the beginning of the chapter, it doesn't tell you whose point of view you're reading from, so you kind of have to figure it out. So by the end of the chapter, you've like gained this new knowledge about the character that you're reading from, but also about like other people in this town and how they're interconnected and what the history of this town is and how it's affecting people. And yeah, and it's really about like the different generations of people living in this town and all the traumatic stuff that's happened to them, and all the struggles that they're going through. And it's also about queerness and how there's a lot of these characters who are like in the closet because it's not socially acceptable for them to come out as queer, and you get to see how that like plays out in their lives. So yes, it's a very dark, gritty story, but it was really hard to get into. At the beginning I almost DNF'd it because I was like, what is happening? I don't get it. But I kept reading, and oh my goodness, once I was in, I was totally absorbed in the story, and I like binge read it. But yeah, I'll link up above my reading vlog for that, because I read that for like a 24-hour spooky vlog back in the summer. So yeah, I'll link that up above if you want to go and check that out. But yes, that is my book tag. I will leave all of the questions down below if you want to do this tag. I think I'm going to tag some people on Twitter, but if you stumble upon this video and you want to do this book tag, then consider this your formal invitation to do the tag. I would be so honored if you did this tag. I will probably also do a version of this on my Instagram as well. So if you don't have a YouTube channel and you want to go check that out on Instagram, I will leave my Instagram link down below. Also, if you have not subscribed to my channel, I would love it if you could consider doing so. I post videos every week, usually on Wednesdays. So yes, I also have my Goodreads and my Twitter and other things linked down below as well if you want to follow me on other platforms. And that is all I have for you. I will see you next week with another video. Bye!